Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to a very special Insights and Innovation series today. Today, we have broken with usual transcription and we have two very interesting guests. And I talk about James Greed, who's from the Payback Project, and also Damien from Net Zero Media. Now, what we're talking about today is sustainability is not just about doing the right thing for the planet. It's now about it being good business. Everything the IMAA does has to be tangible, and we've got to make an impact on it. So, for example, diversity and inclusion, we work very closely with and work on the female leaders of tomorrow. From the reconciliation point of view, we work with the King's Narrative and the work we do out there in Central Australia. And sustainability, we've got our Clean Up Australia Day, but we're still working on a bigger project, a bigger program, and how we deal with this because it's such a big, important issue. And not just for doing the right thing about the planet, but it's probably, and based on last week's news, probably one of the biggest economic issues that this country is facing in the next 10, 15 years with the new goals set about and how we're going to do it. So it's going to affect us, it's going to affect our children, and that's why it's important. And it's not just about the moral issue, it's about good business and how we navigate this from a commercial point of view. Now, without further gas bagging, I'm going to hand over to two people who are significantly smarter than myself. And I talk about Damien and James. Over to you guys.
Thank you. Thanks, Sam, and also Beckers and Nikki for having us here today. For some of you I haven't met, I'm James. I run a business called Payback Project. What we do is we advise marketers and advertisers on how to take climate action in a way that's relevant for their needs and good for their business.
And I'm Damien from Net Zero Media. We're a global emissions measurement, reporting and analytics business that works primarily in the media industry to help media agencies, media owners measure the emissions from their advertising activity.
So what we're talking about today, as Sam said, it's a very complex business. We're going to keep it quite broad, so it's applicable. We're probably going to move at pace, but please do follow up with us afterwards if you'd like more information, you'd like to drill deeper, if you'd like us to come and talk to your broader teams, we'd be delighted to do that. But what that means is we're going to keep it sort of like top line bullets on why climate isn't just about doing the right thing. It is now quite simply just good business. As Sam said, and I'm sure you all saw last week, a couple of things in the news at the moment, because this is very much of the moment. The first thing the government sort of led last week with was their release, long overdue release, of their National Climate Risk Assessment. And what that painted was quite a sort of like dark picture, economically as well as socially, for what will affect Australia if we don't do anything about it and we leave things as they are. And I think just looking at homes at risk in terms of not being insurable on the east coast of Australia, we're looking at 1.5 million homes. And that really is what's sort of like driving the government's desire to continue to set new climate emissions standards and keep investing to drive what is a major economic transition. And they set some new targets for 2035. And with it, some major investment to be able to sort of help Australian businesses and individuals and homes play a role in that transition. A number of things were announced, including, for those of you who are involved with kids' sporting associations, $50 million to help sporting associations decarbonise. So get down there and get the discount for the solar panels on the cricket club roof if you need it. But the thing worth pointing out as well is that this is on top of major investment that the current Labor government has made over the last 3 or 4 years, starting with the Future Made in Australia investment fund, which has seen billions put into the transition of our energy supply to fund a clean energy economy. So what we're seeing is a major economic transition. Okay, it's a path we're on. It's not a question of are we going to do it? We are doing it, and we are on that journey. And many businesses, therefore, are already sort of like playing their role in making that transition. The thing probably also just worth reinforcing is that our business, the business of media and advertising, does contribute negatively at the moment to emissions and global warming. And just in case you aren't familiar with these numbers, it has a direct impact through the emissions associated with the business of digital media. And something around the region of 2 to 3% of global emissions are generated by our industry. And that 2 to 3% is on a par with the aviation industry, which sounds quite scary. The reality as well is that is probably likely to increase or be turbocharged with our current embracing of AI. I think an average AI campaign has 10x energy demand of a standard traditional digital campaign. Hasn't actually been measured yet. Something that people aren't too sort of like keen to have a look at, but there's no doubt that it's going to turbocharge the footprint that we create as it stands. The other thing kind of worth reminding ourselves is that we're in the business of being the architects of desire, and something like 60% of greenhouse gases that cause climate change come from household consumption. That's what we're in the business of driving. So there's this major economic transition happening. We do have a role to playing at the moment, and that's why we're seeing some companies get on board with this. So that said, why is climate action bad for our business? The reality is that with the economic transition underway, many of your clients are already involved, although in a lot of cases, marketing hasn't necessarily received the memo yet. But just a bit of time out to actually sort of look at what are the emergent forces that are creating what we call surround sound of pressure that's driving change across the advertising industry. Now, some of you may be aware of the introduction of mandatory climate reporting that came in this year, that was introduced by ASIC, starting this year with the top 30% of Australian companies. And the reason why that's driven is because the investment community, the global investment community, understanding that climate change is likely to create a risk for some companies, wanted to be able to see independent verified reporting that showed exactly what exposure and risk potential investments had over the next 5 or 10 years. Okay, so what that means is companies are being forced to identify where the risks to their business are in a 5 or 10 year period based upon different climate warming and emissions scenarios. The chances are, if you work with large companies, you can probably go and tap them on the shoulder and understand where they are on that particular journey. What that means, though, therefore, is that's starting to sort of like channel down. And even if your clients aren't telling you at this moment, the chances are that their C-suites are going to be looking at this because they want to protect themselves from any issues associated with investor concern. The flip side of that as well is that we're already beginning to see, therefore, other sort of pressures on potential sort of like clients that might be asking us to show up with our own plans. So not only do we have the top third of Australian companies now required to report climate risk, which might mean that they start asking you what you're doing about it, but also we've seen a massive sort of like improvement in the ASX top 200 and how they are including sustainability requirements in their procurement processes. Now, RMIT actually run a survey to understand and map where ASIC's top 200 companies are in terms of incorporating sustainability questions within their procurement processes. In 2022, only 11% of that top 200. Now it's over half, i.e., along with the top third of Australian companies, we're starting to see more companies whose business you might want to pitch for are likely to ask you where you are on your climate action journey. Okay. On top of that, we're also seeing the number of B Corp certified businesses doubling as well. And over the last 5 years, the number of B Corp certified businesses has doubled to nearly 750. And they're not just small kind of want to do good businesses now. Those 750 businesses in Australia and New Zealand alone represent $25 billion worth in turnover and employ over 50,000 people. And on top of that as well, we're starting to see emission reduction plans beginning to feature in some public servicing pitches. I think over the last 6 months, I've seen ERPs being requested at the RFP stage in 3 different Government New South Wales pitches. Point is, if you don't actually have a plan to show that you're on this journey, it might begin to affect your ability to successfully compete in client pitches. The flip side of that as well is climate concern is an issue for 55% of your cost base, i.e. your talent. Now, on most surveys that I've seen across different industries and the public at large, 70–80% of the public and those working hope and expect to see the companies that they work for demonstrating progressive climate change, or at least a plan to do that. We haven't actually surveyed this, as I understand it, in the industry here in Australia yet. But a recent survey by the IPA in the UK showed that even though most companies there were quite progressed, something like 70% of employees in the UK advertising industry didn't think that their agencies were doing enough. Okay, so climate action is becoming a concern for clients that has a direct sort of impact, therefore, on what they might be asking for us at RFP stage. And it's also an issue, and increasingly an issue, for our employees as well. So if that's the case, what can we do as a business to start taking action to be able to sort of ensure that not having a plan, not being seen to do anything, doesn't affect our opportunity to pitch for the clients we want to grow our business or even attract the best talent? And we talk about there being 4 key actions that we can take. And the chances are many of you own businesses or running business where you're doing some of what we talk about here in action 1. And that's quite simply reducing your own operational emissions. And by that, what we mean is the energy, the travel, and the waste associated with running your company and running your offices. Now, like I say, many companies are moving towards renewable or green energy plans to reduce that. Some already looking at actually how they use air travel less, how they maybe start doing more and more meetings online and so on and so forth. And many of you probably already have decent sort of like waste plans in place. But I think the key thing with reducing your own operational emissions, it simply means thinking a little bit harder about how you use resources in a more efficient and sustainable way, which is why simply putting in place a plan associated with these is going to reduce costs and save you money as well.
Excellent. So this leads us on to action point 2, and this is looking at reduction of emissions from the planning, content creation, and buying process. Why this is so critically important, whereas James spoke initially about the operational areas within your business, a lot of this relates to your advertisers, your clients. As we said earlier, with the mandatory climate reporting coming in, impacting the top third of businesses initially, and then expanding beyond that, advertising is what's called a scope 3 emission. So it falls under that framework over time. So it is an incredibly important aspect of the overall reduction strategies. To understand how this can be achieved, we really need to look at, first of all, where the emissions are coming from in advertising, so that you can then start to measure those areas and then thirdly, start to put in place strategies to ultimately reduce over time. So when we look at advertising from inception through to end of life, there are primarily three core phases that we talk about, being creation, distribution, and consumption. Initially, we look at the creation phase, which is where the advertising creative is actually designed, developed, and then produced alongside of the content. So this is everything from the emissions relating to development of creative concepts, the filming, the production of the assets themselves, the media production that the advertising runs alongside of, all sits within a creation bucket per se of advertising. We then need to take that advertising content, prepare it, and distribute it to the end consumer. So this is everything from transcoding of video, its distribution of advertising via ad servers, distribution of physical formats for out of home via transport and shipping. So all of the power that is utilized to actually ship the advertising from its production through to ultimate consumption. And then the final area is really how the advertising itself is consumed and the power that is used to actually produce that consumption activity. So areas here typically include things like the energy that goes into powering somebody's TV in their home, the power that goes into running a digital billboard on the side of the road, the power that goes into watching a video on your mobile phone. This is all measured in the consumption phase. And ultimately, as part of that consumption phase, we have to dispose of the advertising, primarily when it's in physical form, at the end of its life. So you have this entire supply chain that is used to generate emissions throughout the life cycle of the advertising. Up until recently, the measurement of a lot of these components was inconsistent across markets, inconsistent across channels, inconsistent within businesses. So the Global Media Sustainability Framework was developed to try and standardize the way that emissions from advertising has been developed and reported so that it is consistent and allows for comparison between channels. So when we talk about the Global Media Sustainability Framework, or GMSF as it's known, we typically look at the advertising assets specifically. So the development of creative is typically excluded from those calculations. So the creative concepting, the creative asset production, and the media production as well. We're really just looking at the specific advertising. So starting from storing of the advertising once it arrives at the media, through to distribution, consumption, and end of life. So it is quite a complex supply chain with large volumes of energy that is used to power that entire process. So how do we measure it? Historically, and quite commonly still today, the majority of it is measured via a percentage of media spend basis. So this is a really common way of looking at the amount of money that an advertiser is spending on media and multiplying that by a carbon factor, a single percentage factor that estimates how much emissions have been generated from that amount of spend. The method itself is very broad in nature, and typically overestimated, so to speak. It's a very basic estimation tool. It's low cost. You can apply it very easily to all media channels to come up with a number. And it's typically used by environmental consultancy businesses or whole of business emissions measurement platforms. It can be used both predictively and retrospectively, meaning it can be used to estimate media in advance or used after the fact. But its low accuracy itself can lead to challenges, particularly when you're trying to set science-based targets to reduce emissions over time, because based on the nature of it, the only way to reduce emissions is reduce spend when you're measuring based on percentage of spend. So moving forward, I think we'll see a shift away from this type of measurement to more of the activity-based methods that we'll describe next. The second area or second measurement model is using activity in the form of an emissions calculator. And this is where a business like Net Zero Media and our Carbon IQ platform sits. It adopts the global media sustainability framework inherent within the calculation of media. So it utilizes media activity. So the underlying media metrics that you use to plan your media, purchase your media, in combination with media-specific estimates, factors, and attributes that are used to measure that emissions. From an accuracy perspective, it's a lot more accurate than a percentage of spend basis. We typically see around about 40% overestimation with a percentage of spend basis when you use a calculator to actually measure the emissions. It allows you to start to look at the differences between channels and specific assets within those channels, because you're using actual activity to drive the emissions outcome. Very strong proactively, so can be used to predict and as a planning tool in the emissions from your media to take action in advance of that activity actually running. So if you're looking to make the most effective change, using an emissions calculator is the best place to start. Cost perspective, it's more expensive than free, which is a percentage of media spend basis, but there is a more license-based approach typically to these types of platforms. The final type of measurement model that we see is really an integrated tracking solution. Now, these are either platforms that resemble or replace traditional components of an ad tech stack. They typically are deeply entrenched in the media itself. So we're able to pull out more specific granular sets of data around emissions or the underlying components of the emissions generation. Much higher costs associated with these types of platforms, as they're primarily based on CPM type models or percentage of spend based models. And equally, they're very difficult to use in a predictive capacity. So they tend to be more retrospective. So looking back at the activity after it's happened and then making changes in the future. So they're really the three different types of measurement models. So once you understand what it is that you're measuring and how to measure it, what change can you actually affect? So there are really three areas that we look at when we work with clients around how they can improve the efficiency, improve the emissions from their media activity. First area is effectiveness. So looking at a payoff from premium media. This is really flipping the idea of more is better on its head, and looking at trying to be more efficient or carbon efficient with the purchasing process. So trying to reduce the inefficiencies of media, making it less dirty media, focus more on premium content that can generate better response than just the spray and pray type approach. So focusing based on attention type metrics, looking at grams per thousand impacts rather than just absolute carbon numbers. The other concept there that we talk about is bonus versus premium. So bonus inventory tends to be a carbon sinkhole. It's carbon that is added to a plan potentially unnecessarily, whereas we'd advocate for trying to trade up to more premium inventory rather than adopting just bonus inventory. The second area is waste, looking how campaigns can be optimized to reduce waste. So areas like activities like supply path optimization, to reduce the number of servers that are involved in programmatic media. Advocating for direct purchasing over programmatic type media as a way of reducing the activity. Other areas, creative weight reduction. So the emissions that are generated from transferring one byte of data from one place to another, multiply that by the size of a video, and it starts to add up. So if you can control the weight of your creative and minimize that so that fewer bytes of data are being transferred, that would be ideal. And then finally is the power. Power is utilized and the largest component of emissions across the spectrum. So working with media owners to try and prioritize where they purchase green power as a solution. It signals that they're taking on their responsibility as a business, and then focusing on that as part of your buying panel. Other areas that we might look at are day parting based on grid intensity. So looking at areas of the day where there are more renewables in the grid, and then focusing some of our activity around that.
Cool, thanks, Tim. So two real sort of like hard, meaningful actions that you can take as the first two components of any climate action plan, if you like, to ensure you're on this journey with existing clients and future clients. The third action we talk about is actually how you use creativity to innovate the work that you do for your clients that want to be on this journey, or perhaps can be stimulated on this journey by you asking the right questions. And that's what we call how we refer to it as changing the brief by using media as an innovative force, positive growth for your clients, and as a consequence, your business. So how do you change the thinking that you present to your clients? And there's a couple of things that we're seeing clients do around the world. One is changing the behavior that they are promoting to consumers. There's a really interesting campaign here done in the UK. That market in a lot of Europe is suffering from Cosy Lives as much as Australia, which is why they've sort of taken a real sort of efficient and Cosy Lives, cost of living sort of sensitive approach to the food that they're promoting. So they've done a whole campaign around batch cooking and putting vegetables at the heart of that, because they're invariably cheaper as well. The important thing as well, though, it's a really proactive climate action as well, because eating vegetable-based meals has a far lower emission output at the dinner table than meat-based meals, for example. So it's really sort of interesting behavior change model, using sort of like creativity and the messaging to support household change, but at the same time still drive business for them as well. Really other interesting sort of initiative is a sponsorship partnership that ITV set up around Love Island, where they partnered with eBay to promote pre-loved clothing, which saw all of the talent wearing pre-loved clothing. And again, a perfect platform if you're trying to sort of compete against Temu and Shine and really go up against kind of like fast fashion behavior. Third example we've seen is Hellman's partnering with Prue Leaf's cooking show to promote using Hellman's to make yesterday's leftovers a bit more tasty. Another brilliant way of reducing waste in the kitchen, but at the same time finding a new angle to drive growth for Hellman's whilst supporting Cosy Lives and at the same time reducing emissions by keeping food out the waste basket as well. And all of those concepts came from their media and creative partners as well. The other thing to be aware as far as how can you use creativity and strategic innovation to help your clients on that journey is to be aware of where many businesses are at the moment. And many businesses are looking at actually how they adopt a model of circularity, which is rather than use raw resources to make whatever it is that they make, in this case, IKEA and furniture, they're increasingly looking to drive recycling and reusability, i.e. you want to buy a new IKEA table, bring your old one in. That will either be resold or taken back to a factory, broken down and used to make a new table. Now, IKEA have this fabulous ambition to be entirely circular by 2030. So that's a conversation that you can have with your clients. Not only where are you on the climate action journey, but is circularity something you're looking at? How do we start to promote about it and talk to customers as well? So these are just examples of where you can stimulate conversations with your clients about how you can use media and creativity for the creative media agencies out there to be a partner on that journey and stimulate new projects and new campaigns. And on the subject of client growth and how we grow our business through the work we do is action 4. Now, as time goes by, high carbon emitting clients are probably going to have restrictions imposed upon them. That's to encourage them to pivot. What that might mean, though, is that's a risk for you if you're working with high carbon emitting clients. The flip side of that is as we go through this economic transition, there are going to be new emergent categories and industries that are going to provide future growth sectors. Now, something that's kind of really interesting that Dentsu have done globally, they took the concept of advertised emissions, which is what are the emissions associated with the incremental sales of the products and clients that you are supporting. And by putting that sort of like emissions lens on the clients that they work for, it helped them actually understand where the high emissions client risk base was versus low emissions client risk base. And that enabled them to map potentially, therefore, the level of existing client revenue that might be under pressure from legislation in 3 or 5 years' time. So within their own climate risk assessment report, they absolutely put a line item for what revenue is at risk if these clients do not reduce the emissions associated with the products and services we're promoting. And they simply created, which is what we're seeing businesses do, is start mapping their clients based upon whether they might be high emission, i.e. red brands, or low emission, i.e. green brands. The reality is that most clients and products and services on this journey is somewhere in the middle, okay? They're what you might call amber. And they're the ones that are absolutely the right partners to have conversations about how you pivot them, how you help, in fact, the not so good become better, and indeed how you help the green brands, i.e. the better ones, become bigger. So 4 just very simple key actions that might form part of your plan to help sort of ensure that you are winning, if you like, and realizing the opportunity for the transition that we're going on. So what are, if you like, the potential outcomes, if you like, or the benefits or the return on that advertising? And I sort of like quote here that sort of like contemporary philosopher, Jeff Bezos, who had this great quote, which I think is particularly relevant for this. And he talks about how it's generally human nature to overestimate risk and underestimate opportunity. And I think that's relevant for what we're talking at the moment, because, you know, most of us, when we're running businesses, we're concerned about kind of changing and get on board with transition. But I think the thing to focus on that we've tried to sort of identify, I guess, hone on today is the opportunity that will come from being part of this transition. And at least if you have a plan, you have a program for change on this, it enables you to be part of that conversation that's increasingly happen amongst new categories, emergent categories, and your clients that want to change. So if you just sort of look at the obvious return on action from number 1, because looking after your energy and your waste and travel being more efficient, that's about actually saving resources. So on average, and this has been shown in studies everywhere from Harvard to the VicGov, businesses on average that pay attention to their operational emissions save anywhere between 10 and 15%, which is just a no-brainer. It's just good business.
And the same applies to those businesses that focus on removing emissions from their advertising activity. Anecdotally, we see clients reducing emissions by anywhere from 10 to 20% across the board. We have agencies in Australia that have demonstrated by implementing a very, very simple 4-step strategy, working in collaboration with their media partners, that have been able to generate 6.7 percentage point improvements in brand awareness, while at the same time reducing emissions by 21% year on year with the same effective spend levels. So really, really important thing to consider.
And in terms of return on action 3, you know, how we change the brief, that's about stimulating conversations with your clients to understand where are they on this journey. Do they actually have a ESG lead and plan? Many companies that I've spoken to, the CMO hasn't actually had a conversation with ESG. There's an opportunity for you to lead that conversation, whether they do have an ESG, to break that, or indeed actually like stimulate the conversation with CMO about how this transition might create opportunities for them. And as a conversation follow up, how can you innovate and create solutions for your clients to create new campaigns as well, or even sort of open up the door for a new business or business model opportunity for them and you. And certainly my experience of running agencies, no agency ever got fired for encouraging fresh and proactive thinking. And the 4th kind of return, if you like, on the action 4 we spoke about, and being aware, if you like, of kind of where your clients might sit on that high carbon emission versus low carbon emission matrix, is by actually plotting that and understand where your clients sit, you can see those that need to change. You can better future-proof your client mix based upon their obvious impact on planet and people as well. I think, again, the other thing there that's important as well, it also stimulates you to dig deeper and find out what are going to be the emergent new categories as a consequence of this transition, and get in early, if you like, on helping those new emergent businesses grow, particularly those that are Australian startups. And there's plenty startups in this space associated with the energy transition that's happening at the moment. Now, what we were going to do was just maybe take 2 to 5 minutes out to maybe have a conversation with any colleagues that might be sitting next to you, and and just actually have a conversation about, based upon the opportunities we've spoken about, what opportunities do you see within your business at the moment? But we might suggest that that's something that you have offline after this. And instead, I think we just kind of move on to, so what's our advice based upon what we've said as far as how you might get there and how you might respond to some of those suggestions and actions we've spoken about. Look, I think one of the obvious things is working collaboratively as a group always got everyone somewhere a lot quicker. And the way that you've built up that sort of like brilliant DEI charter, how you've made great progress on your reconciliation action plan, we'd suggest doing something not dissimilar with an IMAA charter for climate. By actually establishing that, you can give everyone the basic principles and the basic tools to get started. Clearly, everyone will go at different paces according to how they think it's relevant or not. The other thing we'd suggest, which we've set up here, is to join the Change the Brief Australia working group. Change the Brief is an online education program that was launched by Purpose Disruptors in London 3 or 4 years ago. We've rolled it out here in Australia. It helps agencies understand enough, go into what we've spoken about a little bit more detail as a group, as a company, to build the action plan that we spoke about. So if you'd like to know more, please talk to me if interested. And the final thing I'd say is, look, wherever you are, to be sort of like part of that transition and realize the business benefits of it, I'd say the thing to do most importantly is craft a plan. Okay. It doesn't have to happen overnight. Just build it slowly and deliberately. And some progress is much, much more relevant over perfection, because no one, believe me, no one is doing this perfectly. Just having that plan and making slow, steady progress and not overstating where you are on that journey is probably the most important thing. And if you need any help, as I sort of like said, to go to the next base or follow up on this, please do feel free to reach out to either Damien or myself. Our contact details are here. If you've got time for any questions, please shout out. We're all ears.
Guys, thank you so much for that. Are there any questions from anyone? Put them in the chat or yell them out. So often there isn't, guys, as I predicted today. There's a lot to consume. Thank you so much, Damien and James Green. Thank you so much for being available today and putting this together. You know, you're both legends of the industry, so we thank you for leaning in and doing what you're doing for the planet. It's greatly appreciated. It just makes good sense for, you know, as we've spoken before, it's going to appear on more and more tenders, and it's coming. So we better get prepared for it sooner rather than later, if not for the next generation, for our own businesses. Thank you guys for joining us. Thank you everyone for joining us. And we're going to circulate this afterwards. And if you have any questions or reach out to them, we've got all the contact details of the guys. They're friends of the IMAA, so we will connect them to you. Thank you so much, everyone.
Hey, thank you, Sam. Thank you, everyone, for attending.